On Christmas Eve in 1945, in the small, tightly knit town of Fayetteville, West Virginia, the home of George and Jennie Sodder was filled with the chaotic joy of a large family. George, an Italian immigrant who had built a successful coal trucking and car repair business, was a stern, hard-working man. Jennie was the warm heart of the home, a devoted mother to their 10 children, whose ages ranged from 23 down to just 2 years old. That night, 9 of the children were present. The oldest, Joe, who was 23, was away serving in the U.S. Army, and the second oldest, Marion, was living in a nearby town. The household that evening included Maurice, 21, Martha, 17, Luis, 15, Jennie, 13, Betty, 9, Sylvia, 7, John, 5, and little Marion, just 2 years old. The older children had been to a Christmas party and returned home late, around 9 p.m., and the family finally settled into bed after midnight, the house falling quiet under a dark, moonless sky. George was the last to retire, checking the doors and windows before he came upstairs around 1 o'clock a.m. He also made his nightly rounds, checking the coal stoker in the basement and the fires in the house, a man cautious by nature. The phone rang sometime after he had gone to bed, and when Jennie answered it, a woman's voice on the other end asked for a name she didn't recognize, and the line then went dead. The family dismissed it as a wrong number, but the strange call would later loom large in their minds. The evening had also been marked by a minor mishap. Earlier, several of the children had been playing and accidentally broke a string of decorative lights on the house, and George, tired, had decided to fix them in the morning. This left the house without its usual festive illumination, shrouding it in an unusual darkness. The family went to sleep, unaware that their lives were about to be shattered forever. Sometime between 1 o'clock a.m. and 4 a.m., Jennie was jolted awake by the sound of a loud thud on the roof, followed by what sounded like a rolling object. Before she could fully process this, the ringing of the telephone startled her again. She rushed to answer it, but, dizzy time, the line was dead. As she turned from the phone, she saw a flickering orange glow outside the window. Tuer, Aurore? The roof of the house was on fire, and flames were already creeping up the side of the structure. She screamed for George and the children. Chaos erupted. George, shouting instructions, helped some of the older children escape through the windows onto the porch roof. He then rushed outside to retrieve his 2 trucks, fearing the fire would reach their gas tanks and explode. In the panic and thick smoke, Jennie and the children who had escaped became separated. They all assumed the others had gotten out safely. Jennie, thinking quickly, ran to the home of a neighbor to call for help, but the phone line was dead there, too. The Fayetteville Fire Department was volunteer-based, and the response was tragically slow. By the time they arrived, the house was a fully engulfed inferno. The firefighters struggled with inadequate water pressure and frozen hoses, and their efforts were largely futile. As dawn broke on Christmas Day, the Sodder home was a smoldering ruin. The assumption, the natural and terrible assumption, was that the 5 children who were missing, Maurice, Martha, Luis, Jennie, and Betty, had perished in the blaze. Their bodies, it was thought, had been completely consumed by the intense heat. The local coroner, without ever finding a single bone or tooth, officially declared that the 5 Sodder children had died in the fire. But for George and Jennie Sodder, the facts did not add up, and their grief quickly turned into a deep, unsettling conviction that their children were still alive. The fire itself was bizarre. It had burned with a strange, ferocious intensity, yet the house directly next door, made a feat Hawaii, was completely untouched. The family's Christmas trees, which were still in the house, were never found. Not even their metal stands or the wire hooks used to hang decorations, all of which should have survived the fire. Most baffling of all was the complete lack of human remains. A fire, even a hot one, does not vaporize bone. Teeth, which are the most durable parts of the human body, can survive cremation temperatures. Yet a search of the ashes by the family and authorities yielded nothing, not a single fragment of bone, not a single tooth from any of the 5 children. George, an experienced and practical man, even sifted through the ashes himself and found strange, non-flammable items, like china plates and metal trinkets, completely intact, further convincing him that the heat could not have been so intense as to destroy all traces of 5 human bodies. The strange events of the night began to form a sinister pattern in their minds. The wrong number phone call was likely a tactic to see if the family was still awake. The thud on the roof could have been something used to start the fire. The dead phone lines at their home and the neighbor's house suggested sabotage. Then a witness came forward, a traveling salesman, who claimed that on the night of the fire he had seen several people driving a car erratically near the Sodder home, and he had seen what he believed to be a human body in the back seat. Another witness reported seeing the children get into a car that night. Perhaps the most chilling piece of potential evidence was discovered days after the fire. As Jennie and her daughter Sylvia were walking near the property, they found a strange, hard, rubber object lodged in the hillside behind the burnt house. It was not something they had ever owned. It was later identified by a state police officer as a pineapple grenade, a type of incendiary device that could have been used to start the fire. The Sodder family's suspicions also fell upon a local insurance salesman who had once argued with George. The man had become angry when George, distrustful of life insurance, had refused to buy a policy for his children, and the salesman had allegedly threatened, "Your goddamn house is going to go up in smoke and your children are going to be destroyed." The Sodder family also believed that anti-Italian sentiment, which was not uncommon at the time, may have played a role, as George was outspoken and had been critical of the Italian dictator Benito Mussolini, which had upset some people in the community. Driven by an unshakable belief that their children were alive, George and Jennie Sodder turned their grief into a relentless, decades-long investigation. They turned the site of their burnt home into a lawn and garden, never rebuilding. As a memorial, they erected a large billboard on their property facing the main road, featuring photographs of the 5 missing children and the offer of a $5,000 reward for information. They followed up on countless leads and sightings from all over the country. A woman in a Charleston bus station swore she saw Martha Sodder being escorted by 2 well-dressed women, looking frightened. There were reports of the children being seen in a car leaving the area that night. They hired private investigators and even consulted a famous psychic. One of the most promising leads came years later, in 1949, when they received an anonymous letter in the mail with a photograph of a young man. The letter stated, "Louis Sodder. I love Brother Frankie Illo boys," a 90132 or 35. On the back of the photo was written, "This is a picture of your son, taken in a booth. He's now going under the name of Illo. He knows who he is. The rest of the children are also well. We'll reveal more later." The Sodders were convinced the young man in the photo was their son Louis, looking older. They had the photograph analyzed, and experts agreed it bore a strong resemblance to Louis and showed no signs of being doctored. But the lead, like all the others, eventually went cold. George Sodder died in 1968, having never found the answers he so desperately sought. Jennie continued the search until her own death in 1989. The surviving Sodder children, particularly the younger ones who were not in the house that night, have kept the case alive, fighting for answers and keeping the memory of their missing siblings from fading into obscenity. The official story remains that the 5 Sodder children died in the fire on Christmas Day, 1945. But the complete lack of physical evidence, the strange circumstances surrounding the blaze, and the numerous unverified sightings have cemented the disappearance of the Sodder children as one of America's most haunting and enduring unsolved mysteries. Were they kidnapped? Was it retaliation for George's political views? Was it a botched attempt at extortion that turned into something far worse? Or did they truly perish in a fire that, against all odds, left no trace of them behind? The questions have outlived everyone who was in the house that night, and the truth of what happened to Maurice, Martha, Louis, Jennie, and Betty Sodder vanished with them into the West Virginia darkness.